Loss should not be taboo. Grief should not be taboo. We should be talking about it to help each other heal and to normalize what it does to our lives, our relationships, and just how we function from day to day. This is part one about Chelsea's passing. On May 11th, 2019, at 4:26 a.m., my phone rang. I picked my phone up. The caller ID said Chelsea. I immediately sat up in the bed and answered with, "What's wrong?" Unexpectedly, I heard her husband's voice, Ed. And he said that he had woken to Chelsea having a seizure and not breathing. Called 911. His brother lived with them, so he called out to Joe. He pulled Chelsea from their bed to put her on the floor to begin administering CPR. The fire station arrived, and then the paramedics arrived. And when he had called me, he said that the ambulance was leaving and he and Joe would be following the ambulance. So as I'm taking all of this in, I've gotten out of the bed and I'm pacing a little bit and waking up Neil. And I tell him something's wrong with Chelsea. I need to go. And I got off the phone with Ed and I'm giving Neil a rundown of what has happened. And he goes, "Do you want me to drive you?" And I said, "Yes, please." I called her dad and I asked if he had spoken with Ed, and he said yes. I said, "Are you going?" And he said yes. And I said, "Okay." I then tried to call my son Chris and couldn't get through. Neil and I quickly showered and put on clothes, and we had to go get gas at the before we went to Fayetteville. So he's pumping gas. I go in the store, and as I'm coming back out, the phone rings, and it's Joe this time. He goes, "Are you on your way?" I said, "Yes, we had to stop and get gas, but we're on our way." And he goes, "They don't think she's going to make it." And I just said, "Okay," and I hung up the phone. I get in the truck, we're pulling away, and I look at Neil, I said, "That was Joe." He said, "They don't think she's going to make it." And I am just perplexed. In my mind, I am thinking, she's got a brain tumor. She has melanoma, and it has metastasized to a brain tumor. Because if you knew Chelsea, you knew that she had very light skin, very fair, and when she got in the sun, it really didn't matter what type of sunscreen we used. She always got sunburned. So those were my thoughts kind of immediately. And so we get on the road. Um, I call my mom. My mom answers the phone, and I tell her what's going on. I then call my sister, who lives 2 streets over from my mom, and I tell my sister what's going on, tell her I'm on the way. Again, I'm trying to call Christopher, and he doesn't answer. And then I'm trying to call my dad also, and I've called my dad a couple of times, and he has not answered. And I'm just kind of sitting there in the truck as we're driving, and Neil's being reassuring. He goes, Jess, I think maybe this is maybe a sleep apnea thing. I honestly don't think this is anything serious. I mean, Chelsea's a young girl. She's 28. She doesn't have any medical problems that we know of. And I just said, yeah, but there was this part of me that was in this state of probably semi-shock, but also, disbelief. I couldn't believe that I was living in this space. And so I tried to call Chris again, and this time he answers the phone. And he goes, Mama, I know. I'm getting ready, and I'm on my way. I said, are you coming by yourself? He goes, no. And the girl that he was dating at the time came with him. And I said, you said you know. What do you know? He goes, Mom, I know she's passed. I said, no. I said, I talked to Joe, and he said they don't know if she was going to make it, but he didn't say anything about her passing away. And he goes, Mom, I talked to Joe, and Joe said she didn't make it. And I said, son, I think you've misunderstood, but it doesn't matter. We just need to get there, and please be safe. Do not drive unsafely. And so I get off the phone with Chris and look at Neil. I said, Christopher said that Chelsea has passed away. Joe didn't say anything like that to me. He goes, they weren't sure if she was going to make it and to hurry up and get there, but definitely not that she had passed away. And so then I kind of get panicky. I said, I'm just going to call the ER. And so I start Googling and looking for the phone number to the ER in Fayetteville. And I can't find it. I can't dial it. I can't make my brain work. And so I said, I'm just going to call her dad. And so I did. And I said, hey, did Joe call you? And he said, yes. And I said, what did he tell you? And he said, he told me that Chelsea passed away. And I said, what? He goes, Jessica, she's passed. And as cold and as deadpan as I could, I said, Chelsea is dead? And he said, yes, Jessica, Chelsea's dead.